always consistent, predictable experience that customers say, whenever I do business with them, this is what I can expect. And it is that consistent and predictable above average experience that gets customers to say that company is amazing.
Welcome to the Simple Brand Podcast, the show dedicated to helping you create simple experiences for your customers and for your team members. Each week, we're bringing you amazing interviews with business leaders and authors who will teach you how to differentiate your business with the one thing your customers need the most: simplicity. Your customers live in a complex world. Let's make it simple. Now, here's your host, Matt Lyles.
This week, I want to introduce a new segment to the Simple Brand Podcast called You Know What Really Grinds My Gears? You know what really grinds my gears? It's brands that focus more on trying to acquire new customers than they focus on retaining their existing customers. What they don't understand is that the probability of selling to an existing customer is close to 70%, while the probability of selling to a new customer and acquiring a new customer is really closer to 15%. And then, when you think of all the cost involved, it actually costs 5 times more investment to attract a new customer than it costs to retain an existing customer. And yet, less than 20% of brands focus more on customer retention than focusing on customer acquisition. Wow, that's a lot of stats and percentages there. Bottom line, you're going to be exponentially successful. You're going to be able to thrive in those good times and in bad times when you place more resources and effort and investment into creating and retaining loyal customers. This week's guest gets that, and he shares a number of lessons around why customer loyalty is so important. It's Shep Hyken. Shep's a customer service and customer experience expert and a New York Times and Wall Street Journal best-selling author. He's the author of 8 books, including his latest, I'll Be Back, How to Get Customers to Come Back Again and Again. So yeah, with that title, there's some Terminator references in this one. And Shep's been inducted into the National Speakers Association Hall of Fame for Lifetime Achievement. He's been professionally speaking for, I think, almost 40 years. Hey, I always enjoy it when my guests are also professional speakers because they usually do a great job of quickly and concisely getting their point across in a way that resonates with listeners. Shep and I talk about how to build and deliver experiences that keep your customers from terminating their relationship with you. And we also discuss the difference between repeat customers and loyal customers and why that matters in your customer experience. So here it is. Here's my interview with Shep Hyken. Hi, Shep. Welcome to the show.
Hey, it is great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I've enjoyed reading I'll Be Back.
Well, thank you. It's one of my favorites.
Well, that's good. That's good.
They say, what's your favorite child? I go, I don't know, the oldest one, the youngest one, but this is the most recent book. So I got to love that one.
There you go. And then, if kids ever get older, whatever child is visiting me currently.
Right. And please don't tell the others that you're my favorite.
Yeah, always. Never tell. So I'll Be Back. How to get customers to come back again and again. But when you look at the design, when you start reading into it, there's a big tie with the Terminator, with Arnold Schwarzenegger. So I got to ask, at what point in the book development process did you decide to tie it into the Terminator?
So honestly, I had no thought of any part of it being about the Terminator. I just kept thinking, this is a great title for a book. And then 3 sentences into my outline, as I'm just starting into it, I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, who made the term I'll Be Back famous? It's Arnold Schwarzenegger. Now, I will tell you, I have reached out to Arnold and asked if he would endorse the book. He has yet to respond, but maybe he'll be listening to this show. He might hear it and he might give me a call.
There you go. Arnold, please do it. Please endorse it. And so this book can speak to a lot of different audiences, no matter what role you're in your company. But if somebody's reading this, but they want their leaders to understand the value of these lessons, how can they get their leadership to buy in?
Buy them the book. No, seriously.
Yeah.
In one of my books, I think it was Cult of the Customer, I talked about 3 different types of people in an organization. And, there was that solo, go it on their own. They're the only one in the whole company that cares about customer service and experience. They're in a terrible situation because they can't get anybody else to join in with them. I refer to that person as the force within, because ideally they want to try to change things. And then you've got, small clusters of group. And ultimately you've got a leader at the top. So I'm not sure where you're going with the question, but I can give you some answers that might clarify. Number one, if the company is not customer focused at the leadership level, it's going to be very difficult to turn people around unless you can prove the ROI. And what we suggest to do that is, number one, you've got to create a compelling case. Understand leadership and CEOs of larger companies, what they're interested in is numbers. So the first thing we suggest is go out and get some basic stats and facts. And we have our own research that we do. And depending on the kind of business you're in, you'll say, here's an interesting stat. 83% of customers will leave after a bad customer experience. Now, that's general consumer type information. Well, let me tell you, in a B2B world, it's a lot more difficult. Granted, that number may not be the same, but if you lose that customer, let me tell you what the difference between B2C and B2B is in this world, in this context. You walk into a mall, a large mall, there might be 10 stores that sell the same pair of pants that you're interested in buying. And that's just one mall in a city of many malls in a country of thousands and thousands of malls, right? But in the B2B world, there is no mall. There might only be 10 companies in the whole world that sell what you do and sell. If you lose that customer due to a poor experience, what's the likelihood of you being able to snag them back? Now, if I'm a consumer walking into a mall and I don't like what I'm seeing at this store or being the way I'm treated, I just go to the next one. And when I come back 6 months later, I might go back to that same store again. You don't get that chance in the B2B world. So the stakes are higher. And even though the numbers don't correlate, you've got to pay attention to it. So create a case with some basic general stats, and then determine how those stats apply specifically to you. If we can reduce our churn by 5% because we develop a little bit better service experience, what does that save us? What revenue do we add to the bottom line? And what would it cost for us to implement a program that would start to make that come to life? And you might see there's a really big delta between what it costs and the huge return you might get back. And you come in with the numbers and your leadership might buy into it. But here's the thing, just because they buy into it doesn't mean anything. They have to decide it's got to be part of the culture and make that happen. If they're not already doing it, big changes are going to have to take place.
Well, then how can they go about making sure that it's part of the culture, ingrained and instilled into everybody?
Sure. And what's perfect about this is that we have a chapter in the book, I'll Be Back, titled The Culture Challenge. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to synthesize a lot of what this is, and I'm going to give you like the 6-step process. And I share this process with many executives. And I was doing a program for some C-suite people, and a gentleman raises his hand, and he's the CEO of a major world international company. And he says, you keep calling these 6 simple steps. How simple are they? How long is this going to take? And I said, how big is your company? He said, we have 35,000 employees worldwide. I said, 4 to 6 years. When do you want to sign the contract? So it's the larger you are, it's like the big ship takes a little bit more time to turn around. Okay. The smaller you are, if you're nimble, if you're a company of 20, 30, 50, 100 people, you can turn on a dime practically. Within a few months, you'll start to notice differences. But let me give you the 6-step process, and I'm going to do it really, really fast. So stop me if you have any questions. Number one, you have to define what that vision is for customer service and experience. What do you want it to be? We have a 3-word mantra here. And by the way, if they're shorter than one sentence, I refer to them as mantras. And they should be short because that way it's easy for everybody to remember and memorize it. So you can walk up to any employee and say, what's her mantra or what's her service vision? And they can recite it. So we're always be amazing. We want to be amazing to our clients and teach our clients to be amazing to their customers, guests, clients, members, whatever. That's what we do. We are a company where I'm hired to go out and speak about customer service and experience. And I have trainers that deliver training programs on the same. And we have on-demand training, that type of thing. But so first and foremost, define it. The Ritz-Carlton uses a 9-word description. We're ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. You come to work at the Ritz, you learn it immediately. It's easy to remember. You'll never forget it. And then they train everybody to how to make that vision come to life. All right. Number 2, communicate it over and over again. Loud. Write it everywhere. Put it on the walls, on pads of paper. And even though it's focused internally, be proud of it enough that you'd want your customers to see it. Number 3, train everybody to it. I just mentioned training with the Ritz-Carlton. Everybody needs to be trained on their responsibility within the service vision. You may be behind the scenes, never see a customer, but you're probably impacting the experience or supporting somebody that does deal with the customer. So recognize your role, and everybody gets trained to the basics of the vision. And then people on the front line are going to be trained differently than people behind the scenes, and depending on what the roles are. Number 4, leadership must set the example. And when I say leadership, it's C-level people, it's managers, it's supervisors. If you've got people that report to you, you must set the example and demonstrate the right behaviors. One of the easiest ways to do it is simply think of this. Treat the people you work with the way you want customers treated, because you can't expect they're going to do anything differently than that. All right. Number 5 is to defend the culture. I interviewed, dozens of pretty big company CEOs. And one of the questions I asked was, what do you think your most important role is? And I got answers like, well, I put together deals. I look for the right thing. We discuss new products. But my favorite was when a gentleman said, I defend the culture. That's interesting. Explain that. He goes, we are known for our great service. And if one person is out of alignment, I've got to get that person in. If I notice a department or a region in our larger group is out of alignment, their numbers are slipping, I've got to get them in because they represent what our culture is. And if it starts to slip, everything goes to heck in a handbasket. That's the right term I'll use today. Anyway,
there you go.
So number 5, defend the culture. Number 6, if it's working, tell everybody, celebrate the success. You don't need to have a huge party, but let people know when they're doing a great job. They love that. They appreciate it. They feel appreciated, respected, and known.
Yes. Yeah. I appreciate that last step because I'm a firm believer in you have to reward and recognize people when they're meeting those culture values, those culture behaviors. And then other people can see that and say, oh, leadership is serious about this.
Yep.
This person demonstrated this. That's part of what we say our culture is, what I see in all these communications and these posters on the wall. Not only that, he got rewarded and recognized for it. Now I know I need to do that too.
Amen. That's exactly what it is. Celebrate the success when it happens.
Yeah. Excellent. I think you just distilled, what could be, like you said, a 4, 5, 6 year change management path into about maybe 90 seconds.
I know. So you define it, you communicate it, you train to it, you demonstrate it, you defend it, and you celebrate it. There, we did it in about 8 seconds.
Nice. And then I want to make sure that everyone understands this. When you talk about communicating it, it's communicating it over and over and over.
Right.
I've seen so many C-suite leaders, and they'll spend, maybe 2-3 months, sometimes even more, crafting this vision statement, crafting these particular statements and honing them and getting just the right words. And they'll announce it at one all-employee meeting. And they'll say, well, I announced it. I expect everybody to remember it now.
Yeah, and that's ridiculous because I'll tell you what we do, and it's very uncomfortable. Well, I make them feel uncomfortable when I'm sitting in a room with leadership and I say, can anybody tell me what the vision and mission statement is of this company? Who can recite it? Nobody.
Yeah.
Sometimes the CEO and the owner of the company can't recite it. They know what's in it. They know what it's about. They paraphrase it. I go, no, exact words. Your recollection doesn't count.
Yeah.
And, when you think about it, it's like, oh my gosh. And one person said, why are you asking me this in front of my boss? I said, I'm trying to prove the point that nobody remembers. So if you don't remember, do you expect the employees on the front line to know what your vision is? So what we want you to do is we want you to you can have a big vision and mission statement. And oftentimes what we're looking for when it comes to that customer service or experience vision is already in that statement. Just pull it out, separate it, and let it stand alone because it's a great North Star for people to look at. And again, I want to see it be less than one sentence. So, 9 words for the Ritz-Carlton. Ace Hardware, one of my favorite clients, the helpful hardware place. 4 words, if you include the word the.
Yeah.
The helpful hardware place. What does that mean? We're going to train everybody on all of our products. So when customers have questions, we can answer them effectively. Or we're going to teach them where to go to get the answers. And when they come in, we're just not going to ask them, hey, can I help you? Because the answer is yes or no. Instead, we're going to ask them, what can I help you find today? And when they tell us, we're not going to tell them to go to aisle 14. We're going to walk them there. We're going to show them there. We're going to ask them, what else can we help you find?
Yes.
That's what helpful companies do.
Yeah. And even beyond the front line. So if you take the Ace Hardware example, apply that as the overall vision for everyone in the organization, whether they're customer facing or, to your term, customer impacting. And every decision that's made, you can apply that as a filter. Is this helpful? Hey, here's our new website design. Here's our new navigation path. Okay, is that navigation path helpful to the customer?
Yep. So what you're doing is perfect. And it ties into something we call customer-focused thinking.
Yes.
And what that means is that every decision you make goes through the filter of asking, how is the customer going to feel about what we're doing? Or how is the customer going to be impacted? You can come up with the right words, but you get the idea that you're basically keeping the customer in mind for every decision you make. Now, this is really important. Not every decision you make is going to make the customer happy. I'm fine with that. It's totally okay. It's when I'm giving you permission to do things that won't make the customer happy. Perhaps you've got a line of merchandise that's just too expensive to produce. It's not profitable and you're going to drop it. And you know that some customers won't be happy that that's happened. But you know what? If you do it right, you're going to communicate it ahead of time. You're going to let them know proactively, and you're going to give them an alternative and suggest what they might find that might even make them happier in the long run. If you're going to raise prices, I can't imagine customers say, oh, good, they're raising prices. I can't wait to spend more money. No, they don't do that. But if they understand why, we had a company we worked with, and they had a manufacturing issue where it was right in the middle of when I believe Trump said we're going to raise the tariff on any imports, and they were importing a lot of their parts and assembling them here in the U.S., and they had a major increase because of this cost. And this is what they did. They said, you're going to see a major increase happening in our product. Let me explain why. The components that go into this, they come from this country. We now have to pay a tax, an import tax on this. And we're not going to mark it up, but we can't afford to eat it either. So you're going to see the price go up by this much. This is why it's happening. We're also lobbying to reverse this mandate. And guess what? Nobody complained about the price being higher. They understood why it was higher.
Right. Yeah. Because, that goes into what you were talking about a moment ago, creating that emotion and playing into people's emotions. A lot of times when you're surprised by something, you're like, well, here's a change. Why did it change? This is negatively impacting me. I don't know why they even did this, so I don't feel good about this. But if a brand proactively communicates it, it says, okay, you know what? I'm kind of part of the inside story now because it hasn't happened yet, but I know that it's coming. So, and now I know why. So I feel a little bit better about that.
Yeah. So good, summary of what we're talking about.
There you go. So earlier you were talking about stats, showing your leadership the stats around customer experience. There's all kinds of stats, all kind of things that they monitor. And they can be monitoring customer satisfaction, net promoter score, all kinds of things to monitor. But what do you say is the most important thing that leaders should consistently monitor?
And you know what? We do a customer experience study every year to benchmark what's important to customers and what's not. But the number one, metric that you want to look at, and by the way, let me set this up. the metrics that most people are looking at are customer satisfaction scores on a scale of 1 to 5 or 1 to 10. Were you happy? Did you like our product? Was there great service? Was the facility clean, etc.? The net promoter score on a scale of 0 to 10, what's the likelihood that you'd recommend us? Those are really, really important metrics. You need those because you need to understand what happened. By the way, that what happened has an ED at the end. Hence, it's past tense. It's a history lesson. It's what happened yesterday or what happened the last time the customer was here. And you need to know that you're doing a good job so you can keep doing the same thing and you can learn from those lessons. The most important metric, however, in my mind, is simply, does the customer come back? It's the behavior of the customer. They can say they love you, but if they don't come back, what difference does it make?
Right. Yeah. It's all about ensuring that they're going to come back again.
Yep. And so let's take a look at that for a moment. Even though we know the customer was happy and they are starting to come back, are they coming back at a cadence that you would consider them to be a loyal customer versus a repeat customer? And there's a difference. Repeat customers look like loyal customers sometimes, but often it's not the case. They may be coming back because the price was lower than the competitor. They may come back because if it's a physical location, perhaps it's closer than the competitor. So you must understand the why behind the reason they keep coming back. But when I came up with the idea for the book, I was working with a client and I started to put a lot of facts down, wondering, what am I going to talk about or write about in my next book? I've got a bunch of new material. I started to lay out a bunch of different concepts. And he and I were talking. I was getting ready to do a speech for about 1,000 owners of hair salons. And imagine, I know people can't see me, but I'm bald. Okay. I just think it's funny that they hired the bald guy to talk about, to talk to all the owners of hair salons. Anyway, we were talking about this behavior, and something that they do is pretty interesting. There's different types of customers. And I think many businesses have different types of customers. In the hair business, typical person who has hair gets their hair cut maybe once a month. Somebody that has specialty color and all that goes into the hair, they may come in addition to the haircut, they may become 4 times a year to get their hair colored or get their hair permed. So anyway, there's a cadence of different types of customers. And when you watch what the routine looks like, you go, okay, that's a steady repeat customer. Ideally, I like them to be loyal, but we'll talk about that later if you want. But here's what the good repeat customer looks like in these different areas. We need to keep an eye on the customer's behavior, because if they miss a month, if they're used to coming every month and they miss a month, we need to know why. Is it because they found someone else? Did they get sick? It's a great opportunity to reach out and connect with them on another level. Why did they miss and break the cadence of their routine? And when you start to understand what your different personas are of your customers, what the different cadences, and you notice somebody going out of alignment, you know that you can bring them back in if you do the right thing. What's even more important is if you notice a group of customers going out of that cadence, and then you realize something's going on. Is there a competitive issue that I don't know about? Are we failing in an area that we don't notice? And it's an opportunity to fix it and ideally save that customer and get them to come back.
So then at that point, what do they need to do to better understand how to get the customer to come back?
What do they need to do to better understand? Well, watch the behavior and ask the customers. Get feedback. When I was 12 years old, I started my first business. And it was a birthday party magic show business where I would go out and perform at birthday parties and get paid to entertain screaming little kids so the parents could have just a small break during that time, right? So I remember my parents saying to me one night, I came home from my first show, write a thank you note. My dad said, follow up a week later, thank them again with a phone call and ask them, how did you like the show? And they will tell you they liked it, most likely. Then ask them, what tricks did you like the best? And if they tell you, great. You don't have to ask them what tricks they didn't like. They're probably not going to want to tell you that. But if you listen to your customers long enough, you'll start to see the pattern of what tricks they like and talk about and what tricks they don't like. Get rid of the ones they don't talk about. Replace them with tricks they will talk about. Now, what that means is you're getting feedback and you're acting on the feedback. And when you act on the feedback, that means that feedback and that effort to get it was worth it. But I'm going to add a third step. Let the customer know that you listened to them and tell them what changes you made as a result. Pretty cool. In the magic show birthday party business, I might inform a parent 6 or 8 months later, hey, it was great, entertaining at Joey or Lisa's little party. I just wanted to let you know, I've talked to a lot of customers about what tricks they love. And as a result, I have a show that's 80% different than the last time I was there. Would love to do it for you. So there's a reason to call and talk to people. But I love this email that I received not even a month ago from the CEO of Walgreens, the pharmacy.
Oh,
Now, it's pretty cool when you receive an email from the CEO of a major company. But I want to tell you, I wasn't the only one. The members of their, I forget what they call their loyalty program, which is actually a membership program. The members of that program, every one of them received the same email. And what the email started out, and I paraphrase it a little bit, is you spoke, we listened. We asked you for feedback. You gave it to us. Here are the changes we're making as a result of that feedback. And I know that it was a generic email, but it made me feel really good to receive that. I thought that was pretty cool.
Oh, absolutely. And especially from a company that size where you probably had the legal team saying, no, we can't send an email like that. We should just make the changes we want to make and leave it at that. Because otherwise, then you'll have this whole group of loyalty members that now think that they can dictate what we can do.
I don't know if it's quite that way. I don't know if most people would think that way. I think most people would say, oh.
I've been on that side. I have had those numerous discussions with legal before, but.
Really, you know what? I would encourage the customers to reach out to me and ask and demand that we make changes. So one of the things we do, and by the way, let me go back to this whole feedback thing. If you tell customers, we will do, you speak, we listen, you ask for certain things. Some people may be in agreement or not agreement with it. But one of the questions we love to ask in a survey, and you can ask, I don't believe surveys should be long. I believe 3 questions. I believe 2 scale of 0 to 10 or 1 to 5, whatever. And then a third question, which is more of an open-ended, where you can get true, what I would call qualitative feedback, and you can get verbatim comments from your customers. And one of the different types of questions, my favorite question is the one thing question. What's one thing we could do to make the experience better? That's what you ask your customers who love you the most. Because if you've got 10,000 customers and only 3 people say, do this, it's probably not in most people's interest that you do it. But what if you have 10,000 customers and 20% of them say the same thing? Even if you had 100 customers and 8 or 10 or 20 said the same thing, you go, wow, I need to pay attention to that. So I call it the one thing question. And other questions I like, if you don't get the score that you hope to get, if on a scale of 1 to 5, they give you a 2, you can say, well, what would it take for us to get a 3 or a 4? By the way, you can program surveys to ask the next question based on what the answer was of that first question. So you can get that type of information.
Yeah. So just understanding, okay, this is what you say the experience is. What would it take to make it, a little bit better?
Yeah. What's one thing you can think of that would make the experience even better?
Yeah. Did you know that in addition to my podcast and my articles, I speak to audiences all over to help them simplify their customer experience and simplify their employee experience? I've spent the last few years leading a crusade of simplicity across the globe. If you want a winning brand, you have to provide a simple experience to your customers and to your team members. Whether it's a live event or a virtual event, I'd love to partner with you and teach your audience how to do just that. With over a decade in marketing, I know how to hook and captivate an audience. And as a speaker, I know how to connect with that audience. Along with my lessons, I use stories and humor to keep everyone engaged and inspired. Then they leave with the knowledge and next steps to transform their business. As an event planner, you're managing lots of details to give your audience the most memorable event. The last thing you need is a speaker who will make your event memorable for all the wrong reasons. Not only will I leave your audience energized and inspired, I'll make it easy for your team to work with me. Hey, if I've built my brand around simplicity, then you know I'm going to make it simple for you. When you visit mattlyles.com/speaking, you'll find everything you need to know, including details on my topics, promotional materials, and most importantly, a link to connect with my team so we can book your event. So visit mattlyles.com/speaking. I can't wait to help your audience brand out from the crowd. Well, so you talk about that. And then earlier you mentioned how it's okay if somebody's unhappy with one interaction or one piece of the experience. You simply want to know about it. So if we talk about creating amazing experiences, so that doesn't necessarily mean creating amazement at every single interaction. Is that correct?
Well, let's talk about what that means. Something you think I said, there's a misunderstanding. It's never okay to have a customer be upset with any part of their experience. Your goal would be they would never be upset. It's bound to happen. There's nothing you can do
Right.
about it. However, in a good situation, you find out about it, you get the chance to turn it around. So let's talk about what amazement is, because people are confused that they think that being amazing means you're over the top, blow me away, the most incredible service I've ever had. That could happen. Great when it does, but that usually it's because something bad happened and you were able to make up for it. Hence, a moment of misery or a complaint was resolved in such a way that the customer says, "You guys are amazing." Okay. And I love when that happens. But day in and day out, you have to practice amazement principles as well. And what I mean by that is never slip to mediocrity. On a scale of 1 to 5, you've got 1 is bad, 2 is fair, 3 is average, 4 is good, 5 is very good or amazing or whatever you want to call it. Okay. Average is 3. If you are a 3, you're a loser in this game. Here's why. Customers just tolerate you. We'll tolerate it. We'll accept it.
Yeah.
It's nothing special. And the moment they have a chance to switch, they will. But the bad thing is they don't ever complain about average. Now, if you get somebody that's upset and complains, well, you've got a chance to fix it. That's great. But what I want you to think about is this: better than average all the time. In other words, a little bit better than average, a little bit better than, what they might expect. And here's what this looks like in real life. When you call somebody, they're knowledgeable. When you call somebody and leave a message, they call you back quickly. And this is what customers say. I love calling them because even when I leave a message, they always get back to me quickly, and they're always so knowledgeable and they're always friendly. The word always followed by something positive is what you're looking for. And is it that big of a deal for somebody to be knowledgeable? And again, I don't expect people to have the information in their head as much as, if they don't have it in their head, know where to go to get the information quickly. Because that is pretty cool. When you say, "That's a great question. I know exactly where to go to get the answer. Can I call you back in 10 minutes? Or would you mind holding for just 15, 20 seconds while I pull it up?" People are totally okay when you tell them you know where to go. And that's what you're trying to do, is create this always consistent, predictable experience that customers say, whenever I do business with them, this is what I can expect. And it is that consistent and predictable above average experience that gets customers to say that company is amazing.
There you go. And recognizing that there might be those interactions where it's not necessarily that amazing, or they had a problem, but the problem got resolved and the resolution made the experience even better.
Yes.
But recognizing that feeling, that memory they have, oh, you know what? I always feel good when I interact with them. They always do this for me.
Yeah. And by the way, even when there's a problem, I know I can always count on them to fix it, which means you've trained people to complain. You want them to let you know when there's a problem. I have a client that actually puts it in the contracts. They're a B2B company that says, if you have a complaint, you are committing, when you do business with us, you've committed to let us know about the problem. It is not allowed to fester. And basically, he goes a step further. At some point, he says, if you don't tell me about it, you bring it up 3 months later, not only is there nothing I can do about it, but it'll probably end our relationship because you didn't feel it was, that our relationship was important enough to communicate that. He's ready to fire customers for not communicating their problems to him.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's pretty strong place and position to be.
That is, but I can imagine when he says that up front, then that means that those clients say, oh, he's not just saying this. He really means business. And therefore, we shouldn't feel bad for bringing any problem to him.
Right. And that's what we want. We want to train our customers to come to us when they have problems because they know that we can resolve them when it happens.
Awesome. And so when we think of all the different ways that customers can bring problems to us. I just think about my lifetime or even just the past couple of decades, how technology has changed. We have so many more channels, so many more ways for customers to interact with us and to let us know that they have a problem, like through customer service. But when I think about all that change, you say that customer service actually hasn't changed. So can you explain that to me?
That's a short little chapter in the book. Basically, nothing has changed in customer service. Here is the way it works. Customer has a question, a problem, a complaint. They reach out to the company and they get their question answered, their problem resolved, their complaint, satisfactorily taken care of, and they're happy. Tell me, that happened 100 years ago. It's going to happen 100 years from now. It's not going to change. There are some things that happen in the middle that may change. There may be a digital self-service solution, get you an answer quicker. But at the end of it all, you got a question, you got your question answered, you're happy. The complaint was resolved to the way you wanted it resolved, you're happy. And nothing's changed as far as that goes. I believe that will be until the end of time. If a customer has an issue and they let the company know about it, the company's going to take care of it. And that shouldn't change.
Okay, that makes sense.
It's a pretty simple explanation, but that's why I tell them, people make this so complicated. It's not. As a matter of fact, to me, it's so common sense. And I always say common sense is not always so common, unfortunately. But if you break it down, what is really going on here? We're just trying to make the customer happy. We can get really sophisticated. We can look at data. We can understand what points trigger customers be happy or angry or whatever. We can figure all types of things out. That's fine. But just keep in mind one thing. You want the customer to be happy with you. And when it is predictable and consistent experience, they're going to come back for more. If you were sitting next to me on an airplane, you said, Shep, what do you do for a living? I'm not going to say I'm a customer service and experience expert. That's about as boring as can be. I'm going to respond, well, can I ask you a question? Have you ever walked away from a business or maybe got off the phone talking to somebody at a business and you thought, wow, that was just a great experience. Those people, they're amazing. Has that ever happened to you? And every time people go, oh yeah. And I could see in their brain, even though I don't actually see what's going on, I could see the wheels turning. They're thinking about that experience. And I respond, well, that's exactly what I do for my clients. I help them achieve those experiences consistently and predictably. And of course, that leads to, well, how do you do that? And so I've written a lot of books. I write articles every week. I'm considered a customer service experience expert. Now they'll go, oh, that's fascinating.
That's it. Yeah. And then those wheels might turn and they say, hey,
I need you for my company.
Yeah. I need help from my company. Or I just had the worst experience last week. Can you go talk to that company?
I love it. You need to talk to the CEO of AT&T or whatever company. Why? And they tell me some experience. Go, yeah, like I'm going to call up and I'm going to complain about your problem to the...
Well, so another thing when we think about customer service or customer interaction, one of the things that has come up, we think that it's come up recently because we tend to talk about it a lot more, but it's really been around in the customer experience for a while. And that's the idea of self-service, offering self-service. So is self-service more of a benefit to the customer, or is it more of a benefit to the business that simply doesn't want to have to deal with that customer?
So, well, first, I feel bad for the company that feels that way. They just don't want to deal with the customer. But I think that it benefits both sides. It's especially beneficial to the customer if it's done the right way. By the way, we've got a great stat in our last, and I'm looking forward. I should this week be getting we just a week and a half ago sent out to the field for the 2022 survey. But this is what we found is that 41% choose digital self-service options, such as a frequently asked question page on a website or a voice response system or willingness to interact with a chatbot. They will choose to go there first before they pick up the telephone, which means 59%, almost 60% still want to use the phone. What we notice is that number is coming down. That 60% or now 59%. Probably this year is going to be maybe 50 to 52%. It's just my guess. We'll see if I'm right. I'll know in the next day or so when we get a report back. But this is what's interesting to me. Self-service isn't because the company doesn't want to deal with the customer. It's because the company wants to give the customer the fastest, quickest solution. And maybe that means they won't call the company as much, which frees up the opportunity for the people who would normally take those calls to deal with higher level issues. Most companies are not letting people go because they've created a digital experience for the customer to replace the customer support agent.
Okay. There are times where we think about convenience, and a lot of companies will, some of the internal discussions say, like, think of how convenient it'll be for us. But when it's done the right way, it's all for the purpose of customer convenience.
Yeah, there's a great YouTube video that's absolutely hilarious of a comedian talking about how, wait a minute, now I have to check myself out of the grocery store. Are they going to pay me to do this? I mean, they pay the cashiers to scan. Are they going to pay me? It's really funny what they do. But the reality is, hey, it's not too hard to scan these items, and you scan them and you put them in your bag and you pay with a credit card or stick a $20 bill, whatever, into the little slot, and it makes change for you. And you know what that means? It means you don't have to wait in line behind somebody that has a huge bag of groceries.
Right.
It's a huge convenience. But guess what? There is always an employee standing nearby those machines to help the customers that can't figure out how to scan the piece of fruit that doesn't have a barcode on it.
That's it. And I think just having the visibility of that employee right there, like, at the end of those rows of machines, you think to yourself, oh, you know what? I know if I have a problem, they're right there. I can see them. They can easily come help me.
Yep, exactly.
Well, and so we talk about having the fastest, quickest solution, and that makes me think of being able to smooth out, remove any friction. And you actually talk about ways to improve the customer experience and remove friction through the friction reduction cycle.
Yep.
Can you walk me through that cycle?
So, so the friction reduction cycle, that's a pretty technical term. Let's go back to that chapter. Actually is a summary of an entire book that I wrote about convenience. I titled it The Convenience Revolution.
Right.
And what the cycle refers to is that when I wrote the book, convenience was a true competitive differentiator. And really what happened back then is like it was a surprise and people really, really liked it. And then what happened is it stopped becoming as much of a differentiator when more and more companies started to recognize the power of being convenient. But the pandemic did, which is pretty interesting, is everybody started to, who normally I would never have thought of getting my groceries delivered, but now I do that. So now I expect it. So we move from really something special, unique, and different to make you stand out to becoming an expectation. So it's at a very mature stage. So you must think about, what am I doing to make this easier to do business with us? Because if a customer has the choice between two companies, one's easier than the other, they're going to go with the easier route, even when the price is a little bit higher. We have studied, and right now we know 52% of customers will pay more for good customer service. That number jumps by about 10 percentage points when it's an easier experience. And when it includes delivery used to be free. You used to be able to call a restaurant up and say, hey, would you deliver whatever it is I'm ordering? And they would. Today, they charge $4 or $5 for that delivery, and I'm happy to pay it. 92% of customers, and this is from our 2020 survey, 92% of customers are willing to pay more when delivery is involved.
Wow. I always knew that, when it comes to convenience and simpler experiences, that the majority of customers will pay a premium. But when you specify delivery, over 90% will pay for that delivery. That's a defined convenience that they recognize.
Right. And what I love is when somebody says it's free delivery or free shipping, there is no such thing as free anything when it comes to business.
No.
They may not charge you extra, but they're charging you within the product.
That's it.
Yep.
Well, so you've got all these lessons on creating this experience that drives loyal customers, even beyond just repeat customers. And when we think about, okay, a leader decides they want to implement this, the rubber meets the road.
Yeah. My favorite chapter.
Yeah. Well, hey, here's how you've learned it. Now here's how to actually do it. Can you quickly walk us through those 6 steps or the most important steps?
Sure. It's real simple. And what you're doing is creating a series of questions and dialogue with team members. And so let me go through them one at a time. They're very common sense. When you hear them, you'll say, oh, that makes sense. The first question is, why would someone do business with me instead of a competitor? And don't say because we have really good people or, because everybody says that. You really need a real differentiator. Number two, why would somebody do business with a competitor instead of us? Why are we losing business, or why are people not coming to us and doing business with them? This is what you want to know. It's intel. Once you understand why customers are going there, ask a third question. Actually, it's a statement called keeping pace. But the question is, what are they doing, the competition, that I should be doing? And if you're not doing it, you should consider doing it. But I urge you to make it your own, make it different. Try to figure out a way not to just straight out copy it, because that makes you a commodity. Right. Real quick example, some really smart person in the hotel industry said, hey, let's give our guests newspapers. We'll tell them, and they get up in the morning, come on down, there'll be a newspaper here for you. And then somebody across the street said, did you see what they're doing across the street? We need to do that too. And then somebody said in that hotel, well, we don't want to copy them. Let's make it different. Rather than make them come down to the front desk to get their paper, we'll drop it off and they'll have it when they wake up in the morning when they open the door. Do you see the difference? They did the same thing, but they made it their own. Anyway, so that's number three. Number four is to look outside of your industry and say, what are the companies I love doing business with outside of my industry? Any type of company, B2B, B2C, doesn't matter. And why do I love doing business with them? And you're going to hear all kinds of different companies, big companies, small. Amazon's usually brought up, a grocery store that they love, a restaurant, doesn't matter. Maybe it's an inside sales rep at a manufacturer that your company does business with. Anyway, you'll get all kinds of different answers, but write them down. And most important, write the why, because why is really important, which leads us to question number 5, which is, all right, of these companies that are doing things that we love, and we now understand, why, is there anything that they're doing that we could be doing, even if we have to modify it a bit? Because now what you're doing is you're snagging ideas from companies that are outside of your industry, which means you're no longer going to be best in your own industry. You're going to be best in the world, at what you do. And you're taking ideas from these great companies. And then once you've answered these 5 questions and maybe implemented some of the ideas, you can go on to question number 6, which is simply, now that I've done some of this, now why would a customer want to come back and do business with me again? And now there you have it. That's the I'll be back concept in action.
There it is. Yeah. Simple steps, but like you were saying, easier, depending on the size of the company, may not be that easy or may not be able to be done in a quick timeline.
Right. Exactly. And so you don't worry about the speed, just worry about the progress.
Yeah. The process and the progress. Shep, last question for you. If you were to create a soundtrack for I'll Be Back, what songs would you include?
So I'm a musician and by hobby. And so I'm going to give you some really good songs. All right, here you go. Benny King. Do you remember the famous song?
Stand By Me.
Stand By Me. Very good. Yeah. We want to stand by our customers. How about Selena Gomez? Kill them with kindness.
Yeah.
Now, do you remember what is the most famous song? And I may be dating myself, Rick Astley. Never gonna let you down.
Never gonna give you up. Yeah.
Yeah, never gonna let you down, never gonna give you up. Right. Carole King, You've Got a Friend.
Oh, yeah.
And here is my number one favorite. This will be the greatest hit on the record. Bonnie Raitt's Let's Give Them Something to Talk About.
Oh, love that. Yes, because your goal is to create loyal customers, but beyond that, you want those loyal customers to talk about that experience and share it with other people.
Yeah.
That's it. Give them something to talk about.
By the way, you got to tell the audience, you said to me at the beginning of this, I'm going to ask you a question at the end. I ask everyone, and I did not have the question until we started this interview. And so I've been thinking for the last 45 minutes about what my answer was going to be.
Good from that. You know what? That seemed like a playlist that was prepared well in advance. So good job.
It wasn't. I honestly didn't know. I go, oh no.
That's why I always ask again right before we start. Yeah. Well, Shep, we've learned so much from you today, but where can people go to learn more?
Well, you can go to I'llBeBackBook.com. Make sure you add the word book behind it. If you do a Google search on I'll Be Back, you'll get a lot of Arnold Schwarzenegger pictures, and you might even get a politician that keeps saying he's going to come back. But we won't go into politics today. You can go to Hyken.com, which is my last name, Hyken. There's plenty of information there. And actually, you can download at no charge my report, which is my ACA report, Achieving Customer Amazement, which is all the stats and facts and benchmark numbers that we have year to year that our customers are telling us they want when it comes to great service and experience.
The newly updated report is coming out next week?
Well, I'm getting the data this week. It'll take me a month to write the report. There's literally, I'm not kidding you, more than 8,000 lines of data. And there's 25 questions. We survey over 1,000 consumers, but because we weight it to the U.S. Census, we take a look at gender, ethnicity, geography, age, and income. And we get a really good cross-section. But when you start looking at, baby boomers versus Gen Zs, that's a whole nother conversation. What are the differences between older and younger generations? But so for every question, we have each one of those broken down. And it really, for me, I geek out over it. It's fascinating.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I do too. I geek out over those types of things too. So I'm looking forward to seeing it. Well, Shep, thank you so much for being here. When you write your next book, I hope you'll be back.
I'll be back.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed my discussion with Shep Hyken. So go and check out his book, I'll Be Back. It's going to help you and your team create a customer-focused culture that'll bring customers back again and again and again. And if you're enjoying the Simple Brand podcast, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. It's going to make it a lot simpler for you to get future episodes like the next one featuring Brian Kramer. Brian is the co-founder of H2H Companies. What's H2H? Oh, that's human to human. Because when it comes down to it, there really is no B2B. There really is no B2C. The experience you should be delivering is really H to H, human to human. Brian's also a business performance coach, a keynote speaker, a TED speaker, and a contributor to Forbes. And Brian's the author of 2 best-selling books, Human to Human and Shareology. Brian and I talk about his lessons on humanizing our business experiences through simpler communication, empathy, and even celebrating our imperfections. So go ahead and subscribe. You'll automatically get Brian's episode as soon as it's live. Until then, keep it simple.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Simple Brand Podcast. Want to make your listening experience simple and automatically receive each new episode? Visit our website, simplebrandpodcast.com, where you can subscribe to the show in iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you listen. If you're finding value from the Simple Brand Podcast, leave us a rating or review. That helps us get the show to the ears of the people who need it most. Be sure to catch Matt right here next week. Same Matt time, same Matt channel. Until then, keep it simple.